Hello students, welcome to the presentation. We discuss constructing formal grammar. It is important to develop our understanding of the grammatical facts of the language we are teaching. It's not these facts that we wish our students to learn. We are not interested in filling our students' heads with grammatical paradigms and syntactic rules. If they knew all the rules that had ever been written about English, but were not able to apply them, we would not be doing our job as teachers. Instead, what we hope to do is to have students be able to use grammatical structures accurately, meaningfully, and appropriately. So that is the main function of grammar. In other words, grammar teaching is not so much about knowledge transmission as it is skill development. In fact, it is better to think of teaching grammaring rather than grammar, as said by Larson Freeman. By thinking of grammar as a skill to be mastered rather than a set of rules to be memorized, we will be helping ESL and EFL learners go a long way toward the goal of being able to accurately convey the meaning in the manner they deem appropriate. In this series, we are going to critically examine the construction of formal grammar in language classrooms in the context of language teaching. The objectives are to realize the need for a change in the methodology of teaching of grammar in the current teaching learning process. We will discuss the following aspects of teaching grammar: degrees of comparison, non-continuous verbs, modal verbs, and infinitives and gerund. So these components of grammar we will be discussing. Teaching grammar, the issues. We shall discuss degrees of comparison. Now there are 3 degrees of comparison: simple degree or positive degree, comparative degree, and superlative degree. Now degrees of comparison is nothing but comparison of adjectives. Let's look at some of the examples. Rama's mango is sweet. Now in this sentence, the adjective sweet merely tells us that Rama's mango has the quality of sweetness without saying how much of this quality it has. Now let's look at another example. Hari's mango is sweeter than Rama's. Now in this sentence, the adjective sweeter tells us that Hari's mango compared with Rama's has more of the quality of sweetness. Now let's look at third example. Govind's mango is the sweetest of all. In this sentence, the adjective sweetest tells us that all of these mangoes, Govind's mango has the greatest amount or highest degree of the quality of sweetness. We thus see that adjectives change in form. For example, sweet, sweeter, sweetest, to show the comparison. Now these are called the 3 degrees of comparison: positive degree, comparative degree, and superlative degree. The adjective sweet is said to be in the positive degree. The adjective sweeter is said to be in the comparative degree. The third one, the adjective sweetest, is said to be in the superlative degree. Now the positive degree of an adjective is the adjective in its simple form. So it is also known as simple form of comparison. It is used to denote the mere existence of some quality of what we speak about. It is also used when no comparison is made. The comparative degree of an adjective denotes a higher degree of the quality than the positive and is used when 2 things or 2 set of things are compared, as let's look at these examples. This boy is stronger than that boy. Which of these 2 pens is better. Apples are dearer than oranges. Now, if you analyze these three sentences, now let us take the first sentence. This boy is stronger than that boy. Now, there is a comparison between these two boys, and the stronger is used to compare between this boy and that boy. The superlative degree of an adjective denotes the highest degree of the quality and is used when more than two things or two sets of things are compared. Now, let us look at this example. This boy is the strongest in the class. So, it is a comparison to the entire class about the boy. Note, there is another way in which we can compare things. Instead of saying Rama is stronger than Balu, we can say Balu is as strong as Rama. Instead of saying Hari is the laziest boy in the class, we can say Hari is the least industrious boy in the class. So, there are two different ways of comparison. Let us also note the superlative with most is sometimes used where there is no idea of comparison, but merely a desire to indicate the possession of a quality in a very high degree. Now, let us look at this example. This is most unfortunate. It was a most eloquent speech. Truly a most ingenious device. This usage has been called the superlative of eminence or the absolute superlative. Non-continuous verbs are verbs that we do not normally use with continuous tenses. These stative verbs are about state and not action, and they cannot express the continuous or progressive aspect. Here are some of the common non-continuous verbs. Now, non-continuous verbs related to feelings, and these are the examples: hate, like, love, prefer, want, wish. Now, for these words you cannot use a continuous verb. For example, I am hating you. You can never say I am hating you. I am liking you. You cannot say I am liking you. Or I am loving you. You can never say I am loving you. You should always say I love you. And you cannot say I am preferring it. No, you should say I prefer it. And you also cannot say I am wanting it. No, you should say I want it. And you cannot say I am wishing you. You should always say I wish you good luck. Now, these are some of the common errors that we make using these non-continuous verbs regarding feelings. Now, let us look at some of the non-continuous verbs related to senses. Now, these are the following words: appear, feel, hear, see, seem, smell, sound, and taste. Now, let us take an example. I am appearing for exam is wrong. You cannot say I am appearing for exam, because appear is a non-continuous verb. Therefore, you need to say I appear for exam. I am feeling bad. You cannot say I am feeling bad. You should say I feel bad. Or you cannot say I am hearing it. You should always say I hear it. And you cannot say I am seeing. You should always say I see it. And also you cannot say I am smelling. You should always say I smell it. Or you cannot say it is tasting good. And most often people say it is tasting good, and that is wrong. Therefore, you should say it tastes good. Now, these are the continuous verbs related to senses that you should always keep in mind. They do not take ing form, and you should not use them in continuous tense. Now, let us look at some of the non-continuous verbs related to communication. Now, verbs like agree, deny, disagree, mean, promise, satisfy, and surprise. With these verbs, you cannot use non-continuous verbs. For example, agree. You cannot say, I am agreeing with you. And most often people use very wrongly. You should say, I agree with you. Or I deny it. You cannot say, I am denying it. Or you cannot say, I am disagreeing with you. You should always say, I disagree with you. So you can also say, I promise you that I would come for a party. And you cannot say, I am promising you. So these are small errors related to non-continuous verbs regarding communication. Now in these list of words, you cannot use ing form. Now let us take up another set of non-continuous verbs related to thinking. And the words related to thinking are believe, imagine, know, mean, realize, recognize, remember and understand. Now these words come under words related to non-continuous verbs on thinking. Now we cannot say, I am believing you. You should say, I believe you. And you cannot also say, I am knowing your name. That is always wrong. I know your name. And you cannot say, I am understanding it. That is also wrong. You should say, I understand your point. So these words you cannot use ing form. You should always say, I understand, I believe, I know, I realize, I recognize, etc. So using ing form would be an error. Now let us look at the other continuous verbs. Verbs like be, belong, concern, depend, involve, matter, need, own, possess. Now even related to these words, you cannot say ing form, and you should not use I am belonging to Hyderabad. No, I belong to Hyderabad. Or you cannot say I am depending on my parents. You should say I depend on my parents. I am needing a book. You can never say I am needing a book. You should always say I need a book. Also, you should not say I am possessing a car. No, we should say I possess a car. So many people make mistakes in this type of verbs, and we tend to use ing form for these verbs. So remember always, for continuous verbs you should never use ing form. Now non-continuous verbs like feelings, senses, communication, thinking, and words are hate, like, feel, deny, agree, know, understand, belong, possess. For these set of words we should never use ing form. And when you learn these non-continuous verbs, your language would be accurate. Now let us use I want a coffee, and we should never say I am wanting a coffee. Let us take up another example. I don't believe you, and we should never say I am not believing you. Does this pen belong to you? And we should never say is this pen belonging to you? It seemed wrong, and you should not say it was seeming wrong. That would be a mistake. I don't hear anything, and we should never say I am not hearing anything. If you say that, it would be a mistake. I cannot see someone in the distance, and you should not say I am not seeing someone in the distance, and if you say that, it would be a mistake. Now what are modal verbs? The following are the modal verbs. For example, can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, must, ought to. Now these are the set of modal verbs. We use these modal verbs to show if we believe something is certain, probable or possible. We also use modal verbs to do things like talking about ability, asking for permission, making requests and offers, and so on. So modal verbs are special verbs which behave very definitely from normal verbs. Here are some important differences. Modal verbs do not take s in the third person singular. For example, he can speak Chinese, and you should not say he can speaks Chinese. That would be a mistake. So here the speak should not have S. For example, he can write English well, and you should not say he can write English well. So writes, you should not have S for the verb write. Now we should also notice you use not to make modal verbs negative even in simple present and simple past tense. Let's look at an example. You should not be late. So after modal verb should, we have negative followed by be form. Let's take another example. They might not come to the party. Notice this, might is a modal verb followed by not, and we have a main verb come in the sentence. Now let's look at the third rule. Many modal verbs cannot be used in the past tenses or the future tenses. For example, we will can go with us. So what is the problem here? The problem here is we are using two modal verbs, double modal verb. For example, he will can go with us. Will and can, we cannot use them in a single sentence. Either you say he will go with us, or you say he can go with us. Now let's look at second example. She musted study very hard, and it is grammatically wrong. There is no past form of musted. You should say he must study very hard. So she studied or she musted study very hard would be a wrong sentence. So modal verbs in this way should be used carefully. You cannot have a double modal verb. So modal verbs should be mastered with appropriate knowledge. So these modal verbs that we have seen so far are can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, must or to. So we need to learn these carefully and use them accordingly. Infinitives are the to form of the verb. The infinitive form of learn is to learn, and quite often most of the students make a lot of mistakes regarding infinitives, and very often most students do not know how to use these infinitives, and they don't even know that there are certain infinitives available in grammar. You can also use an infinitive as the subject, the complement or the object of a sentence. So always remember, infinitive can be used as the subject, as the complement or as the object of a sentence. Let's look at these examples. To learn is important. Here to learn is used as subject of a sentence. Now the most important thing is to learn. In this sentence, if you look at, to learn has come at the end of a sentence, which means it is used as the complement of a sentence. The most important thing is to learn. To learn, the infinite verb has come at the end of a sentence, therefore it becomes the complement of a sentence. Let's look at the third example. He wants to learn. To learn also has come at the end of sentence, therefore it is called the object of a sentence. Now this is what we say, you can use an infinitive as either the subject as we have seen in the first example, or the complement as we have seen in the second example, and the object of a sentence as we have seen in the third example. Now to learn is important. To learn is the subject. The most important thing is to learn. To learn here is a complement, and he wants to learn. To learn here is object of a sentence. So we need to remember these three aspects of infinitives can be used as a subject, object or complement. Now infinitives can be made negative by adding not. Example, I decided not to go. I decided not to speak to her. She told me not to learn anything, or my dad told me not to watch movies. Now here the most important thing is not to give up. So not is used before the infinite verb to give up. Now let's look at another structure, main verb plus gerund. Let's see what is gerund. A gerund is a noun made from a verb by adding ing form. Now the gerund form of the verb read is reading. You can use a gerund as the subject, the complement or the object of a sentence. As we have already seen, the infinite also can be used as the subject, the complement or the object of a sentence. Similarly, the gerund also can be used as the subject, the complement or the object of a sentence. Examples: reading helps you learn English. Now in this sentence, if you notice, reading is the subject of a sentence. Her favorite hobby is reading. In this sentence, reading has come at the end of a sentence. So reading here is a complement of sentence. Now let us look at the third example. I enjoy reading. Reading here is object of a sentence. Now let me give you these three examples. First one, reading helps you learn English. Second one, her favorite hobby is reading. I enjoy reading. Now in these three sentences, reading in the first sentence is the subject of a sentence, and second sentence here it is used as the complement of a sentence. I enjoy reading, it has come at the end of a sentence, and here reading is used as object of a sentence. So gerunds can be made negative by adding not. Examples: he enjoys not working. Now if you look at this example, he enjoys not working. So here working is the gerund. Let us take a positive example. She likes swimming. Now she likes swimming. She likes is the main verb, and swimming. And swimming, if you keep not before swimming, it becomes a negative. She enjoys not swimming in the evening. Let us take up another example. The best thing for your health is not smoking. Here smoking is the gerund, and gerund is preceded by not. So always remember, negative is used just before the gerund. So let us take another example. She told me not to waste time. She told me not to waste time. Not to waste. Here to waste is infinite verb, and before infinite verb we use not, and before gerunds we use not. She likes reading novels. She likes not wasting time. Now wasting time is the gerund and not is a negative. Now let us look at more structures. Verbs plus infinitive. Now here verbs are followed by an infinitive. Example: she agreed to speak before the game. Here agreed is the main verb and speak also is the main verb. So before speak we have infinite verb to. So let us take another example. I aim to achieve first rank. Now here aim is the main verb, to achieve is the infinite verb. Now in this sentence we have verb plus infinite verb. Let me give you all these verbs which will have definitely infinite verb for the structure verbs plus infinite. Now for example, begin, choose, continue, dare, decide, deserve, dislike, expect, fail, forget, get, happen. Therefore remember, the pattern for this structure is verbs plus infinitive verbs. Let us look at verbs plus gerund. Verbs are followed by gerund. As we have seen earlier, verbs are followed by infinite. Here verbs are followed by gerund. Let us look at an example. They admitted working on the boat. Now admit here is the main verb, working is the gerund. In this pattern, verb plus gerund, admitted plus working. Now we have a list of words which are preceded by gerund. Now admit, advise, appreciate, avoid, complete. Now these are the verbs after which we have a gerund. I admit making a mistake. Admit here is the main verb, making a mistake is the gerund. She denied telling lies. She denied telling lies. Denied is the main verb and telling is the gerund. I dislike smoking. Now here in this example, dislike is the main verb, smoking is a gerund. So what we need to remember in this section is verbs are followed by gerund. Now earlier we have looked at verbs are followed by infinitives. Now if you master these two structures, you will avoid making mistakes. Therefore always say they admitted working on the boat. So you cannot say they admitted work. So if you master these sentences, these structures, your grammar and your sentence construction will be perfect and there will be accuracy in your language. This is the end of the presentation.